David Chen never believed in fate. At 28, he was a man of facts and numbers. Every night he sat in the university lab staring at computer screens filled with images of faraway stars. His job was simple: map the universe, one galaxy at a time. During the day, he taught young students about space and graded their papers with red ink. His life was quiet and predictable. Wake up at 7, coffee at 8, classes until noon, then research until midnight. The same routine, day after day. David liked it that way. No surprises, no drama, just him and the endless stars. Maya Rodriguez lived a completely different life. She worked as a nurse in the city's busiest hospital emergency room. Every day brought new challenges: car accidents, heart attacks, people fighting for their lives. At 26, she had seen more pain and hope than most people see in a lifetime. While David studied stars that were millions of years old, Maya dealt with moments that lasted only seconds. She had learned to make quick decisions, to comfort strangers, to find light in the darkest situations. Her world was full of noise, urgency, and human emotion. Their paths should never have crossed. David spent his time in quiet labs and empty classrooms. Maya rushed through hospital corridors, always moving, always needed somewhere else. They lived in the same city, but might as well have been on different planets. But sometimes the universe has other plans. It was a Tuesday evening in late September. Rain pounded against the windows of the university library coffee shop. David sat in his usual corner spot, hunched over his laptop. The screen showed a beautiful spiral galaxy, its arms stretching across space like a cosmic dance. He was trying to calculate the distance to a cluster of stars when his concentration broke. The coffee shop was packed. Students filled every table, their books and laptops creating small islands of study. The air smelled of coffee and the stress of upcoming exams. David barely noticed the chaos around him. He was used to working anywhere, anytime. Maya pushed through the heavy glass doors, shaking rain from her dark hair. She had just finished a 12-hour shift at the hospital. Her blue scrubs were wrinkled, and exhaustion showed in every step. All she wanted was a quiet place to study for her advanced nursing certification exam. She looked around the crowded coffee shop, hoping to find an empty table. Nothing. Every seat was taken. Students typed on keyboards, highlighted textbooks, and whispered study questions to each other. Maya was about to leave when she spotted the one empty chair, right across from the guy with the laptop showing pictures of space. She hesitated for a moment. The man looked serious, completely absorbed in his work. His black hair fell slightly over his eyes as he leaned closer to the screen. He wore a simple gray sweater and jeans, nothing fancy. Maya could see equations and star charts scattered around his workspace. Taking a deep breath, she walked over to his table. "Excuse me," she said softly. "Is this seat taken?" David looked up, startled. He had been so focused on his galaxy calculations that he forgot other people existed. The woman standing next to his table had kind brown eyes and wore hospital scrubs. She looked tired, but smiled warmly. "Oh no, please sit," he said quickly, moving his papers to make room. "Sorry, I didn't realize I was taking up so much space." "Thank you," Maya said, settling into the chair. She pulled out her thick nursing textbooks and placed them on the table. "I'm Maya, by the way." "David," he replied, closing his laptop slightly to give her more room. For a few minutes, they worked in comfortable silence. Maya reviewed chapters about cardiac care while David continued his stellar calculations. But curiosity got the better of her. She glanced at his screen and saw the most beautiful image, a swirling galaxy painted in blues and purples against the black of space. "Wow," she said without thinking. "That's incredible. What is it?" David smiled for the first time that evening. Most people weren't interested in his work. They found space boring or too complicated. "It's the Whirlpool Galaxy," he explained. About 23 million light-years from Earth. Maya stared at the image. Even though she spent her days dealing with very real, very immediate problems, something about the picture captured her imagination. It's so beautiful. Do you study this for work? I'm a graduate student in astronomy, David said. I study how galaxies form and change over time. He paused, then added, It's not as exciting as it sounds. Mostly just math and computer analysis. Are you kidding? Maya said, leaning forward with genuine interest. You're literally studying the entire universe. That's amazing. David felt something warm spread through his chest. When was the last time someone had called his work amazing? What about you? Are you in medical school? I'm already a nurse, Maya explained, but I'm studying for my trauma certification. I work in the emergency room at City General. She gestured to her scrubs. Just got off a double shift. That must be incredibly difficult, David said. He couldn't imagine dealing with life and death situations every day. His biggest stress was usually a computer crashing or a telescope malfunction. Maya shrugged. It has its moments, but I love helping people. There's something special about being there for someone during their worst day, you know, making a difference when it really matters. David nodded, though he wasn't sure he really understood. His work felt important to him, but it was abstract, theoretical. Maya dealt with real people, real problems, real consequences every single day. They talked for another hour. Maya asked questions about black holes and distant planets. David wanted to know about her most memorable cases, the patients who stayed with her long after their treatment ended. Neither of them noticed the coffee shop slowly emptying around them. I should probably get going, Maya finally said, glancing at her phone. Early shift tomorrow. Of course, David said, though he didn't want the conversation to end. It was really nice meeting you. You too, Maya replied, packing her books. Maybe I'll see you here again sometime. I'm here most evenings, David said, perhaps a bit too quickly. If you ever need a quiet place to study? Maya smiled, and David felt that warm feeling in his chest again. I'll remember that. As she walked toward the door, David called out, Maya? She turned back. Those stars you asked about? I think they might be looking back at us too. Maya's smile widened. I hope so, she said. Then she was gone, disappearing into the rainy night. David sat alone at the table, staring at his galaxy images with new eyes. For the first time in his academic career, the distant stars felt somehow closer, more alive. He had spent years studying the universe from the outside, but Maya had reminded him that he was part of it too. He closed his laptop and gathered his papers, already looking forward to tomorrow evening. Maybe she would come back. Maybe they would talk about stars and saving lives again. Maybe the universe wasn't as predictable as he had always believed. Outside, rain continued to fall on the quiet campus. But inside the coffee shop, something had shifted. Two very different worlds had touched for just a moment, and neither David nor Maya would ever be quite the same again. The stars, distant and ancient, continued their silent dance across the sky. But if they were indeed watching, they might have noticed something new beginning in that small corner of Earth, a connection that would prove as powerful and mysterious as gravity itself. 3 days passed before Maya returned to the coffee shop. David had been there every evening, telling himself he was just following his normal routine, but deep down, he knew he was hoping to see her again. When she finally walked through the glass doors on Friday night, he felt his heart skip a beat. Mind if I sit here again? Maya asked, gesturing to the same chair she had occupied before. Please, David said, quickly moving his star charts to make room. How was your week? Maya sank into the chair with a tired sigh. Crazy as usual. We had a car accident victim yesterday, a teenage girl. She was scared and kept asking for her. "Mom." Maya's eyes grew distant. "I stayed with her until her family arrived. Sometimes that's all you can do, you know? Just be there." David watched her face as she spoke. There was something beautiful about the way Maya talked about her work. Even when she was exhausted, her voice carried a warmth that made him want to listen to every word. "That must be hard," he said, "seeing people in pain every day." "It is," Maya admitted, "but it's also rewarding. When that girl smiled at me before, going into surgery, it made everything worth it." She looked at his laptop screen, which showed a colorful image of a nebula. "What about you? Discover any new galaxies this week?" David laughed. "I wish it worked that way. I'm actually studying old light, photons that have been traveling through space for millions of years before reaching our telescopes." He pointed to the nebula on his screen. "This is the Eagle Nebula. The light we're seeing left there about 7,000 years ago." "Wait," Maya said, leaning forward with interest. "So we're literally looking into the past?" "Exactly," David said, his face lighting up. "Every star you see in the night sky is showing you what it looked like years ago. Some of those stars might not even exist anymore." Maya stared at the image with wonder. "That's incredible. So in a way, you're a time traveler." David had never thought about his work that way. "I guess I am." "And you're kind of a time traveler, too." "How so?" "You help people move from their worst moments into their future. You're the bridge between their pain and their healing." Maya smiled. "I never thought of it like that." Over the next few weeks, their coffee shop meetings became a regular thing. Maya would finish her shifts and drive straight to campus. David would save the chair across from him, even on busy nights when other students asked to sit there. They discovered they both loved old movies. Maya preferred romantic comedies from the 80s, while David was obsessed with science fiction. Films. They argued playfully about whether Star Wars or Star Trek had better space battles. "You realize none of that stuff is scientifically accurate, right?" David said one evening after Maya mentioned her favorite space movie. "Of course not." Maya laughed. "But that's not the point. It's about the story, the characters, the feeling it gives you." David was starting to understand that feeling. Sitting across from Maya, listening to her laugh, watching her eyes light up when she talked about saving someone's life, it gave him a feeling he had never experienced while looking at distant galaxies. Maya found herself staying later each night. Her textbooks lay forgotten on the table as David showed her pictures from the Hubble telescope. He explained how stars were born in giant clouds of gas and dust, how they lived for millions or billions of years, and how they died in spectacular explosions that scattered elements across the universe. "So we're made of star stuff?" Maya asked. "One night. Literally," David said. "The calcium in your bones, the iron in your blood, the oxygen you breathe, all of it was forged inside ancient stars." Maya looked down at her hands. "That's beautiful and terrifying at the same time." "Why terrifying?" "Because it makes you realize how small we are, how short our lives are compared to the universe." David shook his head. "I used to think that way, but meeting you has made me see it differently." "How?" "Well, yes, we're small compared to galaxies. But we're also the only part of the universe that can understand itself. We're the universe becoming aware of its own existence." He paused, looking directly into her eyes. "And we can choose to care about each other. That seems pretty amazing to me." Maya felt her cheeks warm under his gaze. She had never met anyone who could make her feel so important and so connected to something bigger at the same time. Their conversations began to blend their two worlds. Maya told David about the patterns she noticed in her work, how certain types of injuries happened more often on rainy days, how patients' recovery rates seemed to follow predictable cycles, how the emergency room had its own rhythm like a living organism. David started seeing similarities between Maya's stories and his astronomical observations. The way trauma patients' vital signs created patterns on monitors reminded him of pulsar signals from distant neutron stars. The process of healing followed trajectories that looked like planetary orbits on his charts. "You know what's funny?" Maya said one evening as they packed up their books. "I spend my days trying to keep people's hearts beating, and you spend your nights studying the heartbeat of the universe." "The heartbeat of the universe?" David asked. "All those pulsing stars, the rhythm of galaxies spinning, the expansion and contraction of space itself. It's all just one giant cosmic heartbeat, isn't it?" David stared at her in amazement. In all his years of study, none of his professors had ever described the universe in such a poetic yet accurate way. As October arrived, their friendship deepened. David found himself looking forward to Maya's stories about her patients. She had a way of finding hope in the darkest situations, of seeing the strength in broken people. Maya loved hearing about David's research breakthroughs, even though she didn't understand all the technical details. His passion for discovery was infectious. One evening, as they walked to the parking lot together, Maya stopped suddenly. "David, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Do you ever get lonely, spending so much time studying things that are so far away?" David considered the question carefully. A month ago, he would have said no. His work fulfilled him, kept him busy, gave his life meaning. But now, "I used to think loneliness was just the price of doing important work," he said finally. "But lately I've realized that sharing what you love with someone makes it even more meaningful." Maya smiled. "I feel the same way. My job can be isolating sometimes. Everyone sees the hospital as a place of sickness and sadness. But when I tell you about it, I remember why I love it." They had reached Maya's car. She fumbled with her keys, neither of them wanting the evening to end. "Maya," David said softly. "Yeah? Would you like to see the real stars sometime? Not just pictures on a computer screen?" Maya's heart raced. "I'd love that." The university has an observatory on the roof of the physics building. It's beautiful. "Up there at night?" "When?" she asked. "How about tomorrow? If you're not too tired after your shift." Maya grinned. "I'll bring coffee." As she drove home that night, Maya couldn't stop smiling. For the first time in years, she was excited about something that had nothing to do with work or studying. David had opened up a whole new universe to her, literally and figuratively. David walked back to his apartment with a spring in his step he hadn't felt since childhood. Tomorrow night, he would show Maya the actual stars, not just photographs. He would watch her face as she looked through the telescope for the first time. The thought made him happier than any research discovery ever had. Neither of them slept well that night, both wondering what tomorrow would bring. The universe, vast and patient, continued its ancient dance above them, but something was shifting in the space between earth and sky, in the small distance between two hearts learning to beat in rhythm with each other. The next evening couldn't come fast enough for David. He spent the entire day checking weather reports, making sure the sky would be clear. He cleaned the observatory telescope twice and practiced what he would say about each constellation. His hands shook slightly as he arranged the star charts on his desk. Maya finished her shift at the hospital with unusual energy. Despite working 10 hours straight, she felt more awake than she had in weeks. She changed out of her scrubs and into jeans and a warm sweater. The October night air would be cold on the rooftop. They met at the coffee shop first, as planned. Maya brought 2 large cups of hot chocolate instead of coffee. "I thought we might need something warmer tonight," she explained, handing him a cup. "Perfect," David said, though his voice came out a bit shaky. He was more nervous than he cared to admit. "Are you okay?" Maya asked, noticing his fidgeting. "Yeah, I hope you like it. The observatory, I mean. Sometimes people expect more than what we actually have up there." Maya smiled reassuringly. "David, I spend my nights in a hospital emergency room. Trust me, a quiet rooftop with stars. Sounds like paradise." They walked across campus together, their footsteps echoing on the empty pathways. Most students were inside, studying or at parties. The campus felt like their own private world. "I've never actually been up on a university building before," Maya said as they climbed the stairs to the physics building. "Is this even allowed?" "I have a key," David said, pulling out a small silver key ring. "Graduate students get access for research projects." The stairwell was dimly lit and smelled like old textbooks and cleaning supplies. Their voices echoed softly as they talked. Maya found herself walking closer to David with each flight of stairs, though she wasn't sure why. "Almost there," David said as they reached the top floor. He led her through a heavy metal door marked Roof Access, Authorized Personnel Only. The moment they stepped outside, Maya gasped. The city spread out below them like a carpet of twinkling lights. But above them was something even more incredible. The night sky stretched endlessly, filled with more stars than Maya had ever seen from street level. "Oh my goodness," she whispered. "It's beautiful." David watched her face more than the sky. The wonder in her eyes made his chest feel tight with emotion. "The light pollution is still pretty bad here," he said. "But on a clear night like this, you can see quite a bit." In the center of the rooftop sat a white telescope, about 4 feet tall, and pointed toward the eastern horizon. David had set it up earlier, focused on his favorite target for first time. "Stargazers. This is our main research telescope," he explained, walking over to the instrument. "It's not the biggest or fanciest, but it's reliable." Maya followed him, still looking up at the sky in amazement. "I had no idea you could see so many stars from the city." "Most people never look up," David said. "They're too busy with their phones or worried about tomorrow's problems." "Guilty as charged," Maya laughed. "Between work and studying, I barely notice if it's day or night sometimes." David adjusted the telescope's position slightly. "Well, tonight you're going to see something special. Look through here." Maya bent down and peered through the eyepiece. For a moment, she saw nothing but darkness. Then David helped her adjust the focus, and suddenly the view exploded into clarity. "What am I looking at?" she asked, her voice filled with awe. "That's the Andromeda Galaxy," David said, standing close behind her so he could guide the telescope if needed. "Our nearest neighbor galaxy. It contains about 1 trillion stars." Maya stared through the telescope, trying to comprehend what she was seeing. The galaxy appeared as a fuzzy, oval-shaped cloud of light, but knowing it contained 1 trillion stars made her feel dizzy. "How far away is it?" she asked, not moving from the telescope. "About 2.5 million light-years," David replied. His voice was soft, close to her ear. "The light you're seeing right now left that galaxy before humans even existed on Earth." Maya slowly straightened up, turning to face him. They were standing much closer than either had realized. She could see the reflection of city lights in his dark eyes. "That's impossible to really understand, isn't it?" she said quietly. "I mean, I can hear the words, but my brain can't actually grasp that distance. I've been studying space for years, and I still can't truly comprehend it," David admitted. "But that's what makes it amazing. There's always more mystery, more wonder." They stood there for a moment, looking at each other instead of the stars. The sounds of the city drifted up. From below, distant traffic, a police siren somewhere, the hum of air conditioning units. But on the rooftop, everything felt peaceful and separate from the world. "Can I tell you something?" Maya said. "Of course. I've always been afraid of feeling small. In the hospital, I see how quickly life can change, how fragile everything is. It scares me sometimes." David nodded. "I understand that fear. When I first started studying astronomy, I felt overwhelmed by how tiny Earth is compared to everything else out there. How did you get past it?" David thought carefully before answering. "I realized that being small doesn't mean being unimportant. Yes, we're tiny compared to galaxies, but we're also the only part of the universe that can think about itself, that can feel wonder, that can care about other people. Maya smiled. You have a beautiful way of looking at things. So do you. The way you talk about your patience, about finding hope in difficult situations, that's beautiful too. A cool breeze swept across the rooftop, making Maya shiver slightly. Without thinking, David stepped closer. Are you cold? We can go back inside if you want. No, I'm okay, Maya said, but she moved closer to his warmth anyway. They spent the next hour looking at different objects through the telescope. David showed her the rings of Saturn, the craters on the moon, and a bright cluster of young stars in the constellation Orion. With each new sight, Maya's excitement grew. I can't believe I've been missing all of this, she said after looking at a colorful nebula. It's like there's been this whole other world above my head, and I never knew it was there. That's exactly how I felt when I first looked through a telescope, David said, like someone had been keeping a secret from me my whole life. They were looking at the moon when it happened. Maya was bent over the telescope, marveling at the sharp shadows cast by lunar mountains, when she suddenly stood up and turned around. David was right there, closer than she expected. David, she said softly. Yeah? Instead of speaking, Maya reached up and gently touched his cheek with her fingertips. Her hand was soft and warm against his skin. David felt like the world had stopped spinning. The city noise faded away. The stars seemed to pause in their ancient dance across the sky. There was only Maya's touch, gentle and sure, and the look in her eyes that told him everything he needed to know. I've wanted to do that for weeks, she whispered. I've wanted you to do that for weeks, he whispered back. They stayed like that for a long moment, Maya's hand against his face, both of them hardly breathing. The universe continued its endless expansion around them, but in that small space, on the rooftop, time felt like it had condensed into a single, perfect moment. The stars are beautiful, Maya said, though she wasn't looking at the sky. They are, David agreed, though he was looking only at her. Later, as they walked back across campus, neither of them could stop smiling. Something fundamental had shifted between them. They were no longer just friends who enjoyed each other's company. They were two people who had found something rare and precious in each other. Thank you for tonight, Maya said as they reached her car. For showing me all of that. Thank you for wanting to see it, David replied. As Maya drove home, she kept thinking about that moment on the rooftop. The feeling of David's skin under her fingertips, the way he had looked at her like she was the most important thing in the universe. She had touched people's faces 1,000 times in her job, checking for fever, offering comfort, providing medical care. But touching David had felt completely different. It had felt like coming home. David walked back to his apartment, with his head full of stars and Maya's smile. He had shown the night sky to dozens of people over the years, classmates, professors, visiting high school students, but he had never seen anyone react with such pure wonder and joy. Watching Maya discover the universe had been like discovering it all over again himself. Above them both, the stars continued their ancient patterns. But if stars could witness human moments, they might have noticed something new beginning on that rooftop. A connection as powerful and mysterious as the forces that hold galaxies together, as gentle and inevitable as light traveling across impossible distances to finally reach home. The weeks following their night on the observatory became the happiest time either David or Maya had ever known. Their separate worlds began to merge in the most beautiful ways. David started visiting Maya at the hospital during her lunch breaks. He would bring her coffee and sandwiches from the campus cafe, and they would sit in the small garden behind the emergency wing. Maya would tell him about her day. The elderly man whose heart attack turned out to be just indigestion, the little boy who needed stitches after falling off his bike, the young mother who gave birth in the ambulance on the way to the hospital. You know what's amazing? David said one sunny afternoon as they shared a bag of chips. The way you describe your patients, it reminds me of star formation. Maya laughed. How in the world does a heart attack remind you of star formation? Not the heart attack itself, David explained, smiling at her confused expression. But the way people come into the emergency room scared and broken, and then you and the other nurses help them heal and become stronger. It's like watching new stars being born from cosmic dust and gas. Maya had never thought of her job that way. So I'm like a cosmic midwife? Exactly, David said, reaching over to squeeze her hand. You help bring people back to life. Maya started. Attending David's research presentations at the university, she would sit in the back of the lecture hall, not understanding half of the technical terms, but loving the passion in his voice as he explained his discoveries. After one presentation about galaxy collisions, an older professor approached her. Are you also in the astronomy program? The professor asked. No, I'm a nurse, Maya replied. I'm just here to support David. Ah, you're the famous Maya, the professor said with a knowing smile. David mentions you in almost every conversation. He says you've changed the way he thinks about his research. Really? Maya felt her cheeks warm. Oh, yes. He talks about stellar nurseries like hospital delivery rooms now, and describes dying stars like patients in hospice care. It's brought a very human element to his work. That evening, Maya told David about the conversation. They were in his small apartment, Maya curled up on his couch while he made dinner. His place was exactly what she had expected. Star charts on the walls, telescopes by the windows, and bookshelves filled with astronomy textbooks. Professor Williams said you talk about me all the time, Maya said with a teasing smile. David paused in his cooking, looking embarrassed. Maybe a little. You've made me see everything differently. How so? David came over and sat beside her on the couch. Before I met you, space was just empty. Beautiful, but empty. Now when I look at pictures of star clusters, I think about communities. When I study planetary systems, I think about families. You've taught me that the universe isn't just about physics and math. It's about connection. Maya felt tears prick her eyes. You've changed how I see things, too. When I'm with a patient who's scared, I tell them about the stars you've shown me. I remind them that they're made of the same stuff as the most beautiful things in the universe. Does it help? David asked softly. More than you know, Maya whispered. They moved in together in March, combining their very different lifestyles. Maya's medical textbooks shared shelf space with David's astronomy journals. Her work schedules with their unpredictable hours and emergency calls somehow fit perfectly with David's late-night observation sessions. Their small apartment became a sanctuary where two worlds lived in harmony. Maya would come home from difficult shifts and find David at his computer, analyzing data from distant galaxies. She would sit behind him, wrapping her arms around his shoulders, and he would explain what he was discovering. David learned to cook, simple meals that Maya could eat quickly between study sessions. Maya learned to be quiet when David was on important research calls with observatories around the world. I love this, Maya said one evening as they sat together on their tiny balcony, sharing a bowl of ice cream. I never thought I could be this happy. Me neither, David agreed, pulling her closer to his side. I used to think happiness was just a distraction from important work. And now? Now I think happiness is what makes the work worth doing. But as David knew from studying, the universe, not all stories have smooth paths. Even the brightest stars eventually face challenges. The phone call came on a Thursday morning in April. David was in his advanced astrophysics class when his phone buzzed with Maya's ringtone. He normally wouldn't answer during lectures, but something made him step into the hallway. David? Maya's voice sounded strange, breathless. Hey, what's wrong? You sound weird. I'm in the emergency room as a patient, David felt his blood turn cold. What happened? Are you okay? I was working a double shift and I started feeling chest pain, shortness of breath. The doctors think it might be... Her voice faded for a moment. They think it might be blood clots in my lungs. David was already running toward his car. I'm coming right now. Which hospital? City General. But David, you don't have to... Stop talking and save your energy, David interrupted, his hands shaking as he fumbled with his car keys. I'll be there in 10 minutes. The drive to the hospital was the longest 10 minutes of David's life. He had studied the deaths of stars, had calculated the end times of entire galaxies, but nothing had prepared him for the possibility of losing Maya. When he burst through the emergency room doors, he was directed to a small room where Maya lay, on a hospital bed, connected to various monitors and machines. She looked so small and fragile in the hospital gown, nothing like the strong, confident nurse he knew. Hey, she said weakly when she saw him. You didn't have to leave class. David pulled a chair close to her bed and took her hand carefully, mindful of the IV line. Are you kidding? Nothing is more important than you. The doctors are running more tests, Maya explained. They think I have pulmonary embolism, blood clots that traveled to my lungs. It's serious but treatable if we caught it early enough. David squeezed her hand gently. You're going to be fine. You have to be fine. Maya smiled weakly. You sound like you're trying to convince yourself more than me. Maybe I am, David admitted. I've never been this scared in my life. Over the next few hours, David sat beside Maya's bed as doctors came and went. Tests were run, results were discussed, treatment plans were made. David listened to medical terms he didn't understand, trying to stay calm while inside he felt like his world was falling apart. David, Maya said during a quiet moment between doctor visits, can you do something for me? Anything. Tell me about the stars, not the scary stuff about dying galaxies or black holes. Tell me about the beautiful things. David took a deep breath and began talking about nebulae that looked like flowers, about binary stars that danced around each other for millions of years, about the way galaxies spiraled through space like cosmic hurricanes made of light. As he spoke, Maya's breathing seemed to get easier. The monitors showed her heart rate slowing to a more normal rhythm. A nurse who had been adjusting Maya's IV smiled at David. Keep talking, the nurse whispered. Whatever you're doing is helping. So David kept talking. He told Maya about star, clusters that looked like jewelry scattered across black velvet, about planets where diamonds might rain from the sky, about the way the Milky Way would look if they could see it from the outside. Promise me something, Maya said as her eyes grew heavy from the medication. What? If something happens to me? Nothing's going to happen to you, David interrupted firmly. Just promise me, Maya insisted. If something happens, don't stop looking at the stars. Don't let this make you afraid of loving the universe. David felt tears running down his cheeks. I promise, but you're going to be fine. And we're going to look at the stars together for the next 50 years. Maya smiled and closed her eyes. I hope so. I really hope so. As night fell outside the hospital windows, David held Maya's hand and watched the monitors track her vital signs. Each beep of the heart monitor was a small victory, each breath a reason for hope. For the first time in his life, David found himself praying to the stars, not as distant balls of gas and plasma, but as witnesses to his love, as guardians watching over the woman who had taught him that the universe was not just vast and cold, but also capable of holding the warmest, most precious things imaginable. Maya survived the surgery, but the doctors warned that recovery would be long and uncertain. The blood clots had been caught just in time, but her lungs needed months to heal completely. She would have to take medication, attend regular checkups, and most importantly, rest. For someone who had spent her adult life caring for others, being the patient was the hardest thing Maya had ever experienced. She felt helpless lying in the hospital bed, watching other nurses do the job she loved. David hardly left her side during those first critical days. "You should go back to your classes," Maya told him on her third day in the hospital. "You're missing important research time." David looked up from the astronomy journal he was reading aloud to her. "Are you trying to get rid of me?" "I'm trying to be practical," Maya said, though her voice lacked conviction. "Your work is important." "You're more important," David said simply. "Besides, I called Professor Williams. He's arranging for me to take a medical leave from the program." "David, no. You can't put your whole life on hold for me." David set down the journal and took her hand. "Maya, you are my life. The research will still be there when you're better. The stars aren't going anywhere." Maya felt tears well up in her eyes. "What if I don't get better? What if there are complications?" "Then we'll deal with them together," David said firmly. "But you're going to be fine. You have to be." The weeks that followed tested both of them in ways they had never imagined. Maya came home from the hospital, weak and frustrated. Simple tasks like climbing stairs left her breathless. She couldn't work, couldn't study for her certification, couldn't do any of the things that had defined her life. David became her caretaker, learning to give injections, monitor her oxygen levels, and watch for signs of new clots. He turned their bedroom into a mini medical station with pill organizers, a blood pressure cuff, and an oxygen tank just in case. "I hate this," Maya said one afternoon after struggling to walk to the kitchen. "I hate being weak. I hate being dependent on you." "You're not weak," David said, helping her back to the couch. "You're healing. There's a difference. I used to take care of other people. Now I can't even take care of myself." David sat beside her, pulling a soft blanket around her shoulders. "You know what I learned from studying stars?" "What?" Maya asked, though she was clearly not in the mood for one of his astronomy lessons. "The brightest stars burn out the fastest, because they give so much of themselves. But when they do, they create supernovas, explosions so bright they can be seen across entire galaxies. And after the explosion, they leave behind elements that become part of new planets, new life forms." Maya looked at him skeptically. "Are you saying I'm having a supernova?" David smiled. "I'm saying that sometimes the strongest people need time to rebuild themselves. And when they do, they come back even more amazing than before." Despite his encouraging words, David was scared too. At night, he would lie awake listening to Maya's breathing, terrified that it might stop. He researched pulmonary embolism until he knew more about it than some medical students. He learned about recurrence rates, long-term effects, and warning signs to watch for. 3 months into Maya's recovery, she had a setback. She developed a fever and shortness of breath that sent them rushing back to the emergency room. The doctors found a small infection in her lungs, treatable but serious. "I'm tired of fighting," Maya whispered to David as they waited for test results. "Maybe this is just how my life is going to be now. One medical crisis after another." David felt his heart break a little. The strong, optimistic woman he had fallen in love with seemed to be disappearing, replaced by someone who looked defeated. "Dao. You remember our first night on the observatory roof?" he asked quietly. "Of course." "Do you remember what you said about being afraid of feeling small?" Maya nodded. "You told me that night that you'd always been scared of how fragile life is, how quickly things can change. But you also said that working in the emergency room taught you to find hope in impossible situations." "That was before I became the patient in the impossible situation," Maya said bitterly. "No," David said, taking her hand firmly. "You're still the same person who saves lives every day. You're still the woman who can find light in the darkest moments. You're just fighting a different kind of battle now." Maya looked into his eyes and saw something she had almost forgotten. The way he used to look at her like she was the most amazing thing in the universe. How do you still see me that way? She asked. I'm broken. You're not broken, David said. You're hurt and you're healing and you're human, but you're still Maya. You're still the woman who taught me that the universe isn't just about distant stars. It's about the connections between people who care about each other. The infection cleared up after a week of antibiotics, and Maya's recovery began again. But this time something was different. Instead of focusing only on what she couldn't do, Maya started noticing small improvements. She could walk a little farther each day. Her breathing became easier. Her energy slowly returned. David celebrated every tiny victory with her. When she could climb the stairs without stopping, he brought her flowers. When she was finally cleared to drive again, he insisted they go for ice cream to celebrate. When she was strong enough to return to work part-time, he picked her up after every shift with a smile that lit up her whole world. 6 months after her diagnosis, Maya was cleared to return to full-time work. Her first day back in the emergency room was emotional for everyone. Her colleagues had kept her favorite coffee mug on the break room counter, waiting for her return. It's good to have you back, said Patricia, the head nurse who had become like a mother to Maya. The place wasn't the same without you. That evening, David surprised Maya with a special celebration. He led her back to the university observatory, where he had set up a small picnic under the stars. I have something to tell you, he said as they sat on a blanket, looking up at the night sky. What? Maya asked, snuggling closer to his warmth. I finished my research project, the one I was working on when you got sick. David, that's wonderful. What did you discover? David smiled. I discovered that the most important things in the universe aren't the ones we can see through telescopes. They're the ones we can touch and hold and love. Maya turned to look at him. That doesn't sound very scientific. Maybe not, but it's true. David reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Maya Rodriguez, you taught me that. The universe isn't just vast and cold. You showed me that it's also warm and loving and full of second chances. Maya's eyes went wide as David opened the box, revealing a simple but beautiful ring with a diamond that caught the starlight. Will you marry me? David asked. Will you help me keep discovering the wonders of the universe, one day at a time? Maya didn't hesitate. Yes, she said, laughing through happy tears. Yes, absolutely yes. As David slipped the ring onto her finger, Maya looked up at the stars that had brought them together. The same constellations that had witnessed their first touch, their first fears, their first hopes, were now witnessing this moment of pure joy. You know what I think? Maya said, holding up her hand to admire the ring. What? I think the stars didn't just bow down to us. I think we learned to bow down to each other, to be humble enough to ask for help, to be strong enough to give it, to be brave enough to love someone completely, even when the future is uncertain. David kissed her gently, tasting the salt of happy tears on her lips. I love your version better. Above them, the ancient stars continued their dance across the sky, the same dance they had performed for billions of years. But tonight they seemed to shine a little brighter, as if they too were celebrating the love between two small humans who had learned that the most powerful force in the universe wasn't gravity or nuclear fusion. It was the simple, extraordinary act of choosing to care for each other, no matter what challenges the cosmos might send their way. 1 year later, David and Maya were married in the university's botanical garden, surrounded by friends, family, and colleagues from both the hospital and the astronomy department. Maya wore her grandmother's wedding dress, and David wore a tie with tiny constellations printed on it, a gift from Maya. During their first dance, Maya whispered in David's ear, "Do you think the stars are watching?" David spun her gently under the twinkling lights strung between the trees. I know they are, and I think they're taking notes on how to love someone forever. Maya smiled, remembering all the nights they had spent learning each other's languages, all the challenges they had overcome together, all the ways they had grown, stronger by choosing to face the universe as a team. The stars, distant and eternal, bore witness to their joy. And in that moment, with Maya in his arms and the whole universe spinning around them, David understood the deepest truth his research had ever revealed, that love was not just a human emotion, but a fundamental force of nature, as constant and powerful as the light that travels across space to guide lost travelers home.